So today is October 29th, 2021. My name is Karen Su. I am interviewing Dr. Xiao Jun Tu on behalf of the Houston Asian American Archive at Rice University. We're pleased to be documenting your oral history today, so thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
To begin, where and when were you born?
In 1943, in the province Henan, in the city by the name Nanyang, is in the southern part of the Henan.
So in your background information, you noted that you have 10 siblings. How would you describe the household you grew up in?
I am the youngest one. And when the family moved to Taiwan in 1949, and that was the end of the Civil War, and I'm the youngest of 11. One of my sisters died very early before my birth, and she was working in the field, and she got hurt and got tetanus, and so for the other, and only 5 of us moved to Taiwan with our parents. The other 5, the elder ones, and they were left behind in China because during the Civil War, particularly near the end of the Civil War, and the older siblings of mine, they were either their own family and they're working somewhere else, or they were with the school. So the transportation and the communications were cut off from the family. So when the family moved to Taiwan, they were left behind. So only 5 of us, and they moved with our parents to Taiwan. The other 5 were left behind in China. I met all of them when the United States and China resumed diplomatic relationship. So I went back to China to visit them, but that was 30-some years in between.
Wow, that's quite something. Okay, so can you describe when did you move to Taiwan? Do you remember the move? Was it traumatic being evacuated from the mainland?
Well, I was 6, so being that young, I didn't have any responsibilities and to take care of the other people. And it would be nice if I didn't make trouble for the others. I didn't have to take care of their troubles. So to me, I knew there was something wrong, something bad happening, and people were afraid, people were anxious. And but it didn't hit me that hard until I was older to realize how hard it was during the war. But when I was 6, I was just a kid, and just follow what my parents told me to do to the best I could, and bear no responsibility for whatever else.
How was it being reunited with 5 of your siblings?
Oh, that was very dramatic. And you often heard this saying, and blood is thicker than water. It seemed to be true. And because when we were separated, and I was 6, and some of my elder brothers, sisters, they were considerably older than I am. So they remember me. I didn't remember them very well. And I saw them first times after 30-some years. And a few minutes passing, I never felt we were strangers. I just felt this blood bond between us. It only took a few minutes when we sit down and talk to each other, and it just it's hard to describe, but you can feel they are your blood siblings.
That's amazing after so long.
Yes, and I, I left in 1949. I went back to see them in 1982.
Wow. Okay. How about what elementary school did you attend?
Uh, Elementary school.
Yes.
The elementary school I attend is in Taiwan. Is an island. I don't know how familiar you are with Taiwan. Is an island. In the southern part of the island, there's a city by the name of Jiayi. Jiayi was not the, it's about the middle-sized city in Taiwan. And our home was on the borderline of the farmland and the city itself. The school I attend to, and it's about 50 kids in one class, and about 3/4 of my classmates, they were farmers' children. And about 1/4 of my classmates, including myself, were from families with other professions. And the school, and I had a great time. I just playing with my friends all day long, and just academically, I never felt the pressure. I was the number one in my graduating class. But at first I didn't fit in because I didn't know how to speak Taiwanese. But after 2 months, I learned Taiwanese, and we just played together all day long.
That's great. What are some favorite childhood memories you have of perhaps school, friends, or family?
It has to do with my parents' education philosophy. And I don't know you believe this or not, ever since my childhood, my parents never really pushed me to study hard. They just occasionally ask me a few things, and they basically just let me alone. And uh, among my brothers and sisters, and one of my elder brothers, he is 11 years older than I am. He's the one pay more attention to my learning than my parents. He did it in the nicest way possible. He challenged me, but never really criticized me for him. He just gave me something to do. If I can do it, he'll give me something harder, and just I got along very well. So basically, I was doing okay ever since my childhood, and my parents never really pushed me anything. And those were the years you didn't have so many extracurricular activities to go through. So you go to school, after school, it's all your playing time. And the homework, of course you do your homework, but it was never hard to me. And for one major reason, it's not I'm doing exceedingly better than the other, is that the expectation by the school teachers were not so high, because 3/4 of my classmates, they were coming from farmers families, and they just want their kids to finish the mandatory education, and they go back to their family and work in the land. So the school expectation at that time were not that high. I'm talking about elementary school. Once you got into high school, it's a different story.
How was your high school experience then?
I was doing okay, and I think I was in the top 5% of the graduating class, but not the very, very top, no more number one. Because the high school I attend to, it's different than here. Here you have junior high, senior high, And we also have junior high, senior high, but we have 3 years of junior high and 3 years of senior high, all in the same school. And the school I attend to was the best. We didn't have any private high school in Jiayi when I was a kid. And in the public school, the school I attend to was the best one in the city. And you go in there by taking the entrance exam, and then they only select a certain percentage of the top score. And I got into there, and so there are many good students. I'm still doing okay. I think I was doing okay, but not the very top anymore. I would say probably top 5%.
Okay. Before we move into talking about your colleges, I want to go back to your parents for a moment. What were some of the values that your parents emphasized in your upbringing?
Well, my parent, especially my mother, he was the traditional type of a mother. Help your husband, help your children, and taking care of the family, and that's basically what she was. My father, his life story, I think is something I think is very dramatic. My grandparents, his father, my father's father, was very poor. My granddad, he was a farm worker. He didn't own his own land. He worked for other people, for some other landowners. And his family was very, very poor. Yet, whenever his friend asked him to borrow money from him, he always did that. And on his dying bed, he called my father. My father was my grandfather's first son. He called my father and asked my father to burn all the borrowing notes and burn it in front of me. Said, don't ask them to repay anything. Money is nothing, even though himself was very poor. So that influenced my father. My father never paid attention to fame and the fortune. And he was a very, very smart person. He came from a very poor family, and hardly, they were almost, I'm not exaggerating, according to my father, they were constantly being hungry. And being the first son in his family, he was expected to finish the elementary school, stay home, work, and help the rest of the family. But he was number one all the time. Elementary school, going to senior high, going to junior high. He was number one in the class all the time. And when he was ready to go into college, that was the very important decision. My grandfather already passed away. My grandma didn't want my father to go. He said, I need you to help the family. And then my father's teacher went to convince her, say, give him 4 more years. Then he can help your a family in a much, much bigger way than him to work in the farm right now. So my father finished his college education, being an educator, and then eventually went into politics and became a national legislator, which is the same as the senator here. So for poor farm workers' families, son become a national legislator. That was miraculous to me. And he never paid attention to wealth, and he just want to get things done right. So even though he never pushed me anything, just by example, that set up a good example for me. So you must gain your self-respect by doing the right thing. Be critical to yourself, then anybody else. And he just showed me by example.
Wow, that's amazing.
Even though he never disciplined me I never was a bad kid. I didn't have any bad habit. The worst thing I can do is to go to movies once in a while. Never want to get into fight, never want to cheat anybody, and never got into bad habit. And some of my brothers helped me to do the right thing as well. I mean, so I had good family education.
Thank you so much for sharing these stories. That's amazing.
So for being a national legislator, actually my father was very proud. He said he was probably, if not the, but one of the most poorest national legislators in the country. Yeah, he just did never pay attention to that.
Okay, so pivoting now to your college days, thinking back to your time at National Taiwan University, how was attending the university for you?
The education system in Taiwan at that time is for the high school, junior high, and the senior high, and particularly for college, you have to take the entrance exam. For the college entrance examinations, it was handled nationally by the government, not by individual school. So all the graduating class students, for those they wish to go to college, they must take the same entrance exams. There are 3 different categories, like science and engineering being one. Then you have agriculture, life sciences, and then all that being the second one. Then you have the literature, the social science and politics, financial being another one. The system changed over time a little bit. From 3 categories, it will eventually reclassified into 4. But at my time, there were 3 categories, and I choose the first category in life, in science and engineering. And so National Taiwan University was regarded, still is regarded as the best university in Taiwan. And in my year, 1% of the high school graduates got into National Taiwan University. So I was lucky to get in.
What were some defining moments for you while you were attending National Taiwan University?
Well, National Taiwan University is a very unusual university. People have a saying, it's so hard to get in, it's so easy to come out. Their education system philosophy is very much closer to my father's education philosophy. He told me what is important, but he never pushed me anything. In National Taiwan University, every class, you only have to take the exam twice per semester. First in the middle of the semester, second in the end of the semester. That's it. You took 2 exams for the course, unless the professor insists his own system, that they can do. But the official requirement is you took 2 exams per semester for each course. Also depends on the professor, whether you attend classes or not. Some of them, they care very much. They call the roll every class. Some of them, they don't care. If you don't want to learn, that's your problem. If you want to learn, if you learn well, even you don't come very often, if you learn well, that's fine with me. So it depends on the professor. And it's not just in college. Ever since I was in high school, I have a very unbalanced study habit. I studied very, very hard for the subject that interested me, but paid not much attention to the other classes. I don't mean I totally ignored them. I just didn't put in enough effort. I just get by. If I get 70%, fine, 80%, fine. For the ones I really like, anything less than 95% is a failure to me. So I was never good in history, geography, literature, sorry, no offense. and social study, I was never good in that, but I was really paying my attention to physics, chemistry, mathematics, and biology, that kind of thing. So it's the same with me for my high schools and for my college education.
What was your specialty in the biosciences?
In National Taiwan University, we did not have Department of Biochemistry for the understudy. We did have biochemistry as a major in graduate training, but not for under. And I went to the nearest department possible to biochemistry, that's agricultural chemistry. Under agricultural chemistry, there are 8 different laboratories you can choose to specialize in different aspects of agricultural chemistry. For my college education in my senior year, I choose to major in human nutrition. Then when after the NTU, the National Taiwan University, and all the male students, we have to serve our mandatory military service. And maybe you know this. The female students did not have that requirement, but we have to participate in this mandatory service. So after college, I went into military service for a year and 3 months. Then I came to United States for my graduate study.
So I'd like to ask you about now your immigration to the US. So
Okay.
when did you move to the US and how and why did it happen?
And the year I came to the United States is 1967. At that time, the economic situation in Taiwan was not very good. It was very difficult for all the college graduating students to find good jobs. Just not enough good jobs available. And the living standards were still low. And so in addition to that, I want to go on with my graduate study, whether in Taiwan or in the United States. I wasn't going to just stop after college. I want to go further in my education. So coming to United States was a high hope for most of us in my time. And we have 72 kids from my class, agricultural chemistry department in we graduated in 1966, then we came to the States in 1967 because of the military service and in between. Then in 1966, my class, we have 72 people and we have 40-some PhDs. So most of us came to study abroad, the United States being the #1 choice, and some went to Europe, some went to Japan. But altogether, we counted it, we have 48. We have 48 PhD in my class, which is not unusual, which is typical for student graduating from National Taiwan University at that time. It just simply you cannot find enough jobs in Taiwan.
Where specifically did you move first to in the U.S.?
I went to Cornell in Ithaca, New York. A beautiful place, except in the winter. It's a long and a very cold winter. Have you ever visited a part of the country?
Yes, but not during the winter.
What months did you go?
During the summer. Like,
oh, good, beautiful. In the fall, that place is so beautiful, except in the winter. It's long and cold, and -20 Fahrenheit is not unusual. And also it's along the snow belt. So sometimes the snow will cover your automobile. You don't know where you parked, then you're in trouble.
So what were some, you experienced weather challenges. What were some other challenges that you experienced?
Well, that came back to my own fault, because I told you I have an unbalanced study habit. So my English was not very good. I got by. I finished the TOEFL test. I satisfied the requirement. I got my visa, but my English was really not very good, especially the listening comprehension. When you speak, if you are brave enough, if you are shameless enough, then you can always express yourself. Even though you are in broken English, you can express what you mean, and people will eventually understand you. But listening, you are trying to understand what the other people try to convey to you. It's controlled by them, not by you. You either get it or you don't. So when I came to Ithaca, and I immediately realized my English was not good enough. So when the professor already spoke the third sentences, and I was still thinking about the meaning of the first sentence. So that's not very good. So I did one thing most of the students from Taiwan didn't do. I don't know you know this or not, the Chinese graduate students, they tend to room with each other. And then they go to school, they speak English. When they come to get apartment, they speak Chinese. And I didn't want to do that. So I decided to work for old couple. I roomed with them. I lived in their home. They gave me a one room, and I work one day for them per week. And so that substantially cut down my rent. And but money saving is one thing, but my major intention was they were old couple, didn't have much to do, so they have all the time and the patience to talk to me in English, to correct my English and explaining things to me. And after half a year, that really helped me. But initially, it was very tough, because I tried to take notes as much as can follow, and then went back to my apartment and try to make up for everything I've got lost in. And it was just very difficult. And so I said, wow, let me improve my English. I did that for half a year, and then it was really one of the best decisions I have made.
Did you experience any cultural shock when you moved to the US?
Yes, and the people were very polite to each other. In Taiwan and in China as well, you may realize that yourself, people speak with louder voices, even when they are not arguing with you. When they are excited, when they are happy, when they tend to speak in high volume of voice, even when speak on the phone. And because of the population density, people sometimes they have to cut in the line, fight for a seat, fight for the entrance to something. And it just in daily lives, you are used to that kind of a thing. Then once come to the United States, you realize, wow, people are so polite to each other and people speak so softly. Then you are going to see something else. That is, people are treating you very nice until you invaded their territory or you invaded their freedom, personal freedom. Then they will set you straight. They'll tell you when they are unhappy with you about something, they are much more straightforward than the Chinese people. Chinese people sometimes will go around it and they tell you, and basically they are very unhappy with you, but they're saying things that going around the subject. But here, if they don't feel they are happy with you, they'll let you know. That's fun. I mean, that's fun with me.
Somewhat related to this, did you experience any racism in school, in the workplace, or in the community in general while in the US?
When I was in graduate school, I didn't feel all that much. And I have very nice professors. I have very nice classmates at Cornell. And but when after that, I majored in biochemistry at the Cornell. After my PhD, I went to Harvard for my postdoctoral training. Even then, I didn't feel very much, except when you go out to hunt for an apartment, when you go out shopping sometime, when you occasionally you encounter something not so pleasant, but nothing all that serious. They just sometimes they say something could be interpreted as offensive, but never really in a very, very rude way. You know what I mean, but so even when during my postdoctoral training, 4 years at Harvard, I didn't feel too bad. But once you are looking for a job, once you begin in a world, you have to constantly succeed by winning the competition. Then you begin to sense that. When I look for a job, during the later years of my postdoctoral training, I was looking for a teaching job. I know I want to be a professor. And I went through many interviews, and in many of the places, I was always the number 2 choice. And may have something to do with my last name, Dr. Tu. And the many places I was number 2. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I was truly number 2 for whatever reason. And and then in the school, sometimes you feel a little bit that I think I'm one of the lucky ones. I never really encountered truly serious discrimination, but on and off you experience something. And one time I remember when my daughter was young, when she was 3, we were driving in some parts of Texas, and she had bleeding nose. We went to a gas station and asked him to use their rest the room. And so I told them, said, my daughter has a bleeding, can we use your bathroom to wash her up and to cool her forehead? They said no. Another time, I and some of our friends, we already reserved the camping ground in a commercial campground. And once we arrived, they refused us. They said, no, we don't have any place for you. It's things like that. And you can still sense that.
Wow. Okay. Going back a little bit, how was it for you attending Cornell for your master's and PhD in comparison to National Taiwan universities?
It's quite different. You know, like I said, National Taiwan University, we joke about that one ourselves. It's hard to get in and easy to come out. At Cornell, and suddenly, you are among some of the best students there. And it's quite different in graduate. You are a PhD student yourself. In graduate study is something that the teacher, they don't really give the information to you. They teach you how to learn yourself, right? So it all depends how you push yourself. But the good professor, even though they don't push you, but they let you know what their standards are. You can study without me pushing you, but you better live up to my expectation. Otherwise, there's no compromise. I mean, I let you know what my standards are. I don't look over your shoulder constantly. So I was really, and I don't feel bad admitting in my 4 year for college, I play more than I study. I did well. And out of the 8 semesters over there, I got to my class number 1 being twice. I did well, but I really didn't study to gain the knowledge. I studied to get good score in the test. So it's a different kind of a study. But when I got to graduate school, that was the time I know this is for real now. This is not for play. So I really try to better myself. I push myself. I never studied that hard until I went to graduate school. I just want to know, to know more, to do better. And I push myself very, very hard. I worked extremely hard when I was in graduate school.
Did you have
and my professor, my major advisor, I'll be forever grateful to him. And also my advisor for my postdoctoral training at Harvard. I'll be forever grateful to both of them. They were so nice to me and very patient, very nice to me, but yet they set the highest standard for me. And they told me I should be even more critical for my own work than they are. So I carry that lesson throughout my academic career. I think honestly, I can say I am probably the worst critic of my own work. I learned that from my 2 advisors.
How was it? So you went from Cornell to being a fellow at Harvard, which is quite an achievement. How did you attain that honor? Was it because of research or perhaps teaching excellence?
I did well, and in my graduate study, and usually it depends on no, the number is deceiving sometimes. Usually on the average, but you got a soft feeling about it. On the average, if a graduate student can have 2 or 3 high quality refereed publication, that sometimes is considered sufficient for a PhD degree. I got 7. So I think I did well for my graduate study. So when I was about to graduate from Cornell, I sent out a number of application letters, including the one I eventually went to at Harvard. And so during the last, I think near my graduation from Cornell, my advisor sent me along without him, just sent me along to Germany for an international meeting to present something we did. And so my wife came with me. And on the plane, we were seated in different rows. And next to her was a gentleman and reading a lot of documents during the flight. And my wife carried out a conversation with him. And that gentleman said, are you by yourself? My wife said, my husband is in a different room back there. So what did he do? He said he was a graduate student and coming to this meeting. That gentleman said, oh, I am too to come to this meeting. And my wife asked, what's your name? And he said, so-and-so. And I said, my wife, you are one of the people my husband applied to. And he said, what's your husband's name? He said, Xiaochun Tu. So then the professor asked my wife, did you type the letter for him? My wife said, how do you know? He said, you typed my name wrong. and then my wife said, so sorry. And then later on, after meeting, he accepted me. My wife told me, say, you owe me because I typed your name wrong, so he remember you. That's her story.
That's great.
So that's one interesting story. My wife always claimed the credit for me being accepted by him.
So when did you move to Houston and then become an assistant professor at the University of Houston?
I came to Houston in 1977. And immediately after my postdoctoral training at Harvard. And well, I don't know how to put, I have a total of 6 offers, including some universities with much bigger names than University of Houston. And I had a very difficult time to choose. And eventually there are 2 major reasons. And I say this, some of the viewers may not be happy because I like to be in a university. I prefer not to in a medical school because I'm not an MD, I'm a PhD. So that helped me to narrow down my choice. That's one thing. Another thing that came to University of Houston is the Houston was at that time in 1977, the 5th largest city in the United States. And of course, it's the largest one in Texas. And that's a major reason I came to Houston because I truly believe every big city must have at least one top-ranked large public university. And Houston is the one. It has many rooms for improvement, for growth. And at that time, University of Houston was regarded as a second-tier research university. But I believe it has a lot of potential for growth. And in such an environment, what little contribution I can make probably can be valued better. than being a professor in Harvard or Stanford or Berkeley and Yale. And in those places, you don't get tenure until you're a full professor. And in most of the schools around the United States, you basically get tenure when you're promoted to associate. But in Harvard, you don't get tenure until you're a full professor. So, and I think, and if I come to University of Houston, which I believe has a great chance for significant improvement in its academic standards and its prestige. And whatever little contribution I can make probably can be valued. And that's the reason I can. And I served here 30-some years. And I have several other job offers during those 30-some years. And the fact that I eventually retired from here, saying that I think I made the right decision. There were some regrets, and I don't know anybody live out their life without any regret. There were some regrets, but the positive things outweigh the negative things. I think I made the right decision to come. And indeed, University of Houston now is first-tier research university.
So you began your long career at University of Houston as assistant professor, then associate, then chair of the Department of Biochemical Biophysical Sciences, and then finally professor emeritus. How was it to stay in one department, one institution over the course of so many years? And did you witness any changes in your department and the university generally?
Well, they are. I mean, we are like many other schools, and we allow professors to go on sabbatical leave. I took several of the sabbatical leave, and I went to UC Santa Cruz. I went to the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and I went to 4 different universities in Taiwan for my sabbatical leave. So that was a very, usually, every 6 or 7 years, you are allowed to go on sabbatical leave. I did. So I took advantage of that. And that's the time you meet with different people and to broaden your scope. And also you learn some new things. You get into some new field, you learn some new technique, and talk to different people, and every people think differently. So you can learn from other people all the time. You can learn from your students in the classroom. And the teaching is not one way. And sometimes they have novel ideas never occur to you. So even though I stay with University of Houston, but I took advantage of that kind of a thing. I enjoy teaching. Many people, they think teaching is in the way of a research. I don't believe that. I never believed that one for a second. I pay great attention to teaching. And I also like to learn from other people. And so that's fine. And I didn't feel I was isolated.
Could you describe your research specialties?
I'm a little bit idealistic. I'm interested in basic research. On top of that one, I'm partial for things that can be rationalized, things that can be explained explicitly in basic scientific terms. I don't want to offend you. I don't mean that at all. It's just my personal liking. And so I For example, I don't want to study social science. It's so hard, so complex. You are looking at not just individual, you are looking at a group of people, a much bigger picture, difficult to explain things. I like to explain things like a 2 + 2 = 4. There's no argument. So I choose in the field of biochemistry. Biochemistry, you can go from bio to chemistry and everything in between. It's a still very broad field. I choose enzymology, and it's to learn how enzymes work. And you learn that by understanding the enzyme structure. You learn that by understanding the enzyme chemical mechanism. And then you marry the two together, try to understand why a particular enzyme with such a structure can do things like this. And many of those questions can be answered in very basic scientific terms. And that is my challenge. So I choose to be an enzymologist, and not just that, but I choose to try to understand the chemical and the physical mechanisms, how enzymes catalyze reactions. And that's my major research emphasis. But on the side, I also deal with some biotechnology problems. So those are just branch out from my basic research. Once in a while, I say, well, this can be applied to something in technology term. So we did that. Well, I don't remember, I have 6 or 7 patents, not a whole lot, but I have 6 or 7 patents. And 4 other colleagues from the same department. And the 5 of us, we set up a biotechnology company in Houston in 2000. Very lucky for us. Most of the operational fund, we got it by grant money, not out of our own pocket. If it's out of our own pocket, I couldn't afford it. And so we were very lucky. We got some very good grant, and that carried us for 8 years. In the year 2008, somebody else bought our company. So we are one of the luckier ones, because in the field of technology, more than 90% of the small companies die. And we didn't really die, when they bought us out. So we're still lucky. And so make a long story short, the major emphasis of my study is the basic enzymology science. A small part of my research is biotechnology.
How did you move from your research specialties to creating your startup company?
It's a good marriage for the 5 of us. We have myself is in the general biochemistry and the general biophysics, plus my interest in spectroscopy. Those are my area. Another person is in molecular biology. Another person is in synthetic chemistry. Another person is in computer simulation. Another person is in chemical engineer. So the 5 of us got together. And not to bore you, just in one sentence or two, basically what we were specializing is to use spectroscopy and to use enzyme to do a very, very fast, a very, very large number of tests to determine the human genome DNA sequence. At that time, the available technology would take about several weeks to 1 month. for about to complete for a group of 20 some scientists to finish the human genome sequence. We want to do it in a few hours. So we proved the concept, and at a much smaller scale. But our scale has to be magnified to hundreds of a thousand times, or meaning so larger scale, in order to do the several hours, within a few hours, a real-time DNA human genome sequencing. We didn't have that expertise for that kind of a software and the hardware design. So somebody else bought us out. I cannot tell you who did it. We signed it. But so we lasted for 8 years. That was a nice experience.
So as co-founder of Vizigen Biotechnologies, did you face challenges between you taught for so many years at a public university? Did you face any challenges in creating a private company and commercializing?
Actually, it's not just our university, and all over the world, and the people try to do the technology transfer from the academic units to industrial units, and that's how you, in a sense, that's how you repay the society. You don't just take grant money to study for your own fun. Hopefully, you can do some good. And the basic research, whether the thing you are interested in, whether that will do some good for the general public or not, sometimes you never know. Sometimes 20, 30 years after, or suddenly people find out something, oh, yeah, this comes from that kind of a weird study many, many years ago. Now it's paying off. So, so what we do it's not something against the university's will. Actually, it's highly recommended, highly encouraged by not just our university, all over the world. They try to do the technology transfer, and so, and we were lucky, and we were able to find an outlet. Eventually, somebody took it from us, and it didn't just go and die. And so that was very rewarding. And we didn't get anything other than encouragement from the university. But you do that, not compromise your own duties. So that's outside commitment should never be an excuse to compromise your own duty.
So you received a number of patents. Could you talk a little bit about them, perhaps which ones you are most proud of?
Well, I think the one we were most proud of is the ones eventually we formed the company, and for the real-time single molecule DNA sequencing. And then when I was postdocing, I got one patent. And then when I was in my own position at the University of Houston, before we formed the company, I had 2 or 3 other patents on my own, but none of them really find an industrial home until this Vizigen company. And so, by the way, the patent on the single digit in the area of biotechnology, and all the patents only a single digit % of the eventually find industrial applications. It's a low single digits, and like 1 or 2% eventually find true applications. So sometimes, it's just some good ideas floating in the air, never really find a home. That's most of the case. But this one's, And we were not the only people working for the single molecule DNA sequencing. I think at that time, there were about 7 or 8 of us competing to achieve the same goal. That is to finish the DNA, human genome sequencing within hours. And there was a review article published in the prestigious Nature. And it was a review article on the subject of fast DNA genome sequencing. And our work was reviewed in the article. So that's one thing I'm proud of. It's not just my own work. There are 5 of us, and we have a 20-some people team working for us outside of the campus.
So you've received a number of awards, publications, and patents. Were there any other defining moments for you during your career?
The defining moment is is a self-satisfaction you gain by putting out things you are proud of. Like I say, I try to be most critical about my own work. And I have a somewhat, I truly believe if you put your name on the publication, you are responsible for every single word in that paper. Often somebody says something wrong. When I encounter them, say, oh, we have a number of co-authors, and that part of the work is not mine. I don't buy that argument. Choose your collaborator carefully. You don't know something, you learn. And if you put your name on, you're responsible for the entire paper. You cannot say, oh, that part of the work doesn't come from it. And it may have a partial meaning, but never is should not be something and you are totally innocent about. So I don't put out any paper lightly. I publish something I'm happy with that product. It's a good satisfaction to me. May not be to other people, but I'm proud of what I have published. Another thing I must emphasize, being a professor, even bigger pleasure is to see your students, the people I have trained, to do great things. Make me look back. Some of my students, they are really doing very, very well, and really make me very, very happy.
Throughout your teaching and mentoring experience, what do you think is some guidance that is most needed by students, more specifically by foreign students and Asian students?
The Asian students, one thing is, lucky for us in the field of science, when we publish something or when we submit something like a proposal, and you must have a sufficiently good English skill. Otherwise, that would be a severe handicap for you, because you have to communicate with people, to tell people why you are doing good things, and you're doing things better than many other people. Otherwise, why should I be giving you the grant money instead of to other people? So you have to tell them what's good, what's great about your work, about your idea. So that's a communication. That communication is not for you to understand. The communication is for others to understand. So you must think when you write something, don't think in your own terms, think about the other people. When they see that, how do they perceive the meaning of your presentation? That goes for written document, that goes for oral presentation. Make your key points clear. and emphasize the key point. And so particularly for Chinese and Asian students, and I think they should pay attention to not just language as a language, but also the philosophy, the principle for presentation. It's for other people to understand. It's not for you to understand. And remove the ambiguity. If you can say something clearly in 5 words, don't use 10 words. You just dilute the density of what your presentation. And if you say something, hopefully there's no second way to interpret. And I always told my students, there's no second chance to make the first impression. If you make the first impression wrong, then it's so much harder for you to overcome that, to get back on the right track. Just do it right. Don't, when people ask you a question, when I go to the oral qualifying exam and for graduate students, the thing I didn't want to hear is when you ask them something, they don't know the answer, then start giving you a lot of things, turning around, saying this, saying that, and nothing is to the point. That's worse than just say, I don't know. But if you can help me with this and that, maybe I can figure it out. That's a better answer. Instead of, oh, no, this and that, nothing to the point. That's the word. So that's a beautiful for doing science, and the apply to social science, to what, not just natural science. And that's why they call it PhD, Doctor of Philosophy. And show them your logic. It didn't happen to me, but it happened to one of my classmates at the Cornell. One professor asked him during his oral qualifying exam, give me an estimate how many barbers there are in the United States. Basically, the professor was not looking at the exact number, but basically, you know the population in the United States. You know approximately what's the age group and how often people would go on for haircut. So you divided it down, then you can have an estimate how many people, it may be off by a factor of 10, maybe by a factor of 100, but if you have a large trend of thinking, so you can take the population and then consider the difference in gender, difference in age group, and then you eventually come to an estimate how many people are seeking for a haircut per day. And then you, on the average, a barber probably can handle 10 customers or whatever. Then you have an estimate for the number of barbers in the United States. That's the thing that professor was looking for. It was not really looking for a number. It was looking at how you analyze the situation, how you come up with your answer. That's good. That's a good question to me. So I try to teach my students how to learn by yourself. And I also try to show them by example. And not just only do good science, but do science good, do science right. Don't steal other people's work. Always acknowledge other people's achievement, and and so do science right. And don't. For example, I'm giving you one example. If you come up with a new technique, you published. Some people use your technique with a tiny bit of modification. From there on, they only cite their own work. They don't sign your work anymore. That's cheating. In the end, you have to feel good about yourself. I learned that one from my father. Don't do anything you lose your self-respect. Acknowledge other people, and doesn't make you look small.
So moving on your CV, it states that you were on the board of the Evergreen Chinese School from 1984 to 87.
Mhm.
Could you talk a bit about your time on the board of the Chinese school and
Well, it's a private school, and the reason for that is that those were the year my daughter was in that school learning Chinese. So my wife was a teacher and also an officer and managed some of the administration things. And I came on the board for a few years. And basically, so everybody chipped in, try to make the school work. And we always believe that we are in the United States, and my daughter, I have only one child, my daughter, and she was born in Boston, and so she is the bona fide American, and however, Chinese was her root, and by learning Chinese, she understands her past, she understands a brand new world, and she can benefit from the many thousand years of a Chinese culture. It only helped her so she needs to understand where she ancestors came from and what's the culture, and so it only will enrich her instead of detract her from her growth as a person. And so now she was in the Evergreen Chinese School, and because it's a small private school, and it live on donations, and many people just work for the school, and so we're putting a lot of time to make that one work. Once my daughter went through that system, so we just move on with her. So we were only very, very active with Chinese Evergreen School for a number of years after my daughter graduated, and we just slowly step down, and the other younger families take over.
what do you think about the way Chinese American children are taught Chinese after school? Do you think it's effective?
The school is by itself is never enough. You learn something, eventually you forget. You have to use it, and if you don't use it, then eventually you lose most of it. And so at home is a very important training ground. And so like my daughter, she's good with speaking and the listening, but her writing is still pretty, the written language is still pretty bad. And that also has something to do with her being the only child, because if she doesn't have any other people aside from my wife and I to help her to carry out some of the Chinese speaking and the writing practices. But she learned sufficient to read, but she just doesn't write very well. And she can recognize. We took her to Taiwan. We took her to mainland China, many different places, and she recognized this road signs and the restaurants and all that important things. So it helps. The most important thing is such a treasure. You learn one more language, you learn so much more beyond the language itself.
Speaking about your daughter, First off, like what's her name? If you could tell us, how did you educate your daughter? As in, what are some values that you emphasized in your daughter's upbringing?
That's a hard question because I never really gave her serious lectures of any kind. I think my wife and I basically, I am more or less, pattern myself after my parents. I just try to show her by example. And to this day, I don't think I have ever given my daughter any serious lectures. Just show her we care, we love her, we pay attention, we try to help her any way we can. And of course, sometimes we don't think she was doing the right thing. We'll let her know. But I don't think I use lecture or discipline type of thing.
Do you?
And by the way, she graduated from Rice.
What did she graduate in?
Double major, biology and the arts. What a double major.
What is your daughter?
Yeah, biology and the arts.
What is your daughter now doing?
And she, you know what her profession is now? Architecture.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating.
She's a licensed architect.
Wow, good for her. So another question I have, do you belong to any church or have any religious affiliations?
No, the answer is no. I believe you should always be honest, be nice to the other people. And but I don't have any religious belief.
Okay, and what do you do for relaxation in your free time, and like what have you been doing since your retirement?
Gardening is one thing, and traveling is another. Except that now we have this pandemic, and so for over almost 2 years now, we haven't been doing any serious traveling, but eventually it will pass. And I think there's a Chinese saying, traveling 1,000 miles is better than reading 10,000 books. So traveling, it's not just for enjoyment, you also learn a lot of things. Sometimes even you go to the very poor, very turbulent places, but you can also appreciate what you have now. And you just learn so much. As what you read in the press, in the media, it's never a full coverage. There's always some hidden stories. They may tell you the truth, but it can never be the whole truth because there are so many different aspects to everything. Sometimes you heard so much about A, heard so much about B. Once you get there, then, oh no, this is not really the full story. I don't like politics. I really don't want to like politics. So I never give people, I don't want to debate with anybody about religion or politics. But I make my own decision, but you make your decision based on your conscience.
How was it for you and your family living in Houston compared to other places in the US?
I grew up in Taiwan, and Taiwan, the weather pattern is very similar to Houston, except that Houston in the winter could be a little bit colder than Taiwan. And Taiwan, especially in Taipei, is just as hot and humid in the summer as in Houston. And after 5.5 years in Ithaca, New York, after 4 years in Cambridge, Massachusetts, I still like the hot weather better than the cold weather. So Houston weather-wise doesn't bother me. And even I don't like the humidity, but it didn't bother me all that much. It's similar to the place I grew up in Taiwan. I don't like the cold countries. And also in Houston, now it's the 4th largest city in the United States. But you look at the traffic, you look at the crime rate, you look at the cost of a living, you look at the job opportunities, Houston actually is pretty good. So be grateful to whatever you have. Don't complain about the things you cannot have. We don't have weather like San Diego all year long, but we do have some days like San Diego. We don't have the truly freezing winter, and we don't have a 2/5 of snow. So appreciate what you have. I like Houston.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate the weather we have here. It's not California. I'm from California, and it's not California, but it's definitely better than I used to live in Chicago. So it's definitely better than that.
The California weather is fine, but you have mudslide, you have a polluted air, and you have an earthquake in some parts, and then they have this wildfire every year. And you have the very, very severe homeless people problem over there, much worse than Houston. And so no place is perfect. But Houston is overall is pretty good.
I'd like to pivot now to a different set of questions. So you have an impressive list of publications, and I can see that you've led a number of research by students and scientists of Asian backgrounds. And in general, Asian Americans' contributions to scientific research in the US have been well documented. What do you think about current attitudes towards negative attitudes towards immigration? Do you think it might negatively impact US scientific advancement?
The short answer is yes. The many Asian students benefited for being able to study in the United States or even work in the United States. But it's not one way, it's both ways. Many people have contributed significantly. I mean, many Asian people in all walks of the life and contributed to the United States and to the world. So people must realize it's a two-way street. It's not just one way. And if you have one good scientist, you realize the other country foot the bill for that person's education all the way through college or through high school. So it's not just you are totally lost. You gain some too. And also that person may contribute to the better life in the United States for about 3 or 4 decades after his or her graduate study in different parts of the society. So by having immigrants, not just for graduate students, but having immigrants and in United States, it's always a two-way thing. So United States from the very beginning is a melting pot for immigrants. And so now I'm not going to get into that one too much because I really don't like to spend too much time talking about politics. But now there's a very unhealthy environment by a large number of people in the United States toward China. I think that's very unhealthy. And it would be so much better for both parts and for the world if we can elaborate on things we can do together to help each other, instead of I criticize you, I fight you in this way, you do the same to me. I don't think anybody would benefit from that, other than some politicians may survive by promoting this kind of thinking. But in reality, I think it's mutual cooperation, and you maintain the differences, but you look for ways to help each other. You don't have to, I don't have to dictate what you think, how you live your life. Let's focus on how we help each other. That's what my thinking is. I said immigration, of course, if you don't do the right, it could be a problem. But in principle, immigration is a good thing.
What about, out of the pandemic has emerged so much anti-Asian racism and sentiments. What was your reaction to hearing about this proliferation of racist sentiments during the pandemic?
Eventually the truth will come out. And the pandemic, the truth has to be based on fact and science, not based on politics point of view. And that's the major issue people have to understand. Unfortunately, many of the people switch around the priority. Their opinions are based on political thinking instead of the other way around. That's not good. But it's very difficult to tell people you're not thinking right. When people tell me I'm thinking right, I will resist to acknowledge that one, perhaps to some degree. But eventually, the conclusion has to be based on science and the fact. And there's also one thing, the Asian people, sometimes they are very critical for themselves, very forgive other people's wrongdoing. And sometimes they got hurt and they say, oh, I take it and I don't want to make trouble. I think people should speak up. And I'm very happy that the younger generation like you are, not every Asian populations, a large number of them choose not to go into science and the technology and go into the other area, in finance, in law, in social science, in literature. That's good, because Asian, during my time, most of the people concentrated in science and the technology. It's too narrow. And science and technology, fine, you can do that. You probably can excel in your own chosen field, but for the entire society, the impact is very narrow, much less than people in law, legislation, public service, politics. We need all kind of people, Asian people, to participate in different aspects of the society. We shouldn't just concentrate in medicine, science, engineering, and nothing wrong, but don't be that being the only choice. And I choose science for my own liking. And ever since it wasn't even a practical concept. Ever since my childhood, I like science better. I like math and I like the physics better than history, than geology. I was very poor in geology. And so what's the major product in this part of the area? How do you, or what's the railroad connecting to? I don't know. But I spent a lot of effort studying the natural science. But that shouldn't be the same thing for the majority of the Chinese population. I can see the change now, but during my time, very few people go into areas other than science. Excuse me.
What in your view are key characteristics required to be a good scientist, a good researcher?
First, you must love what you do. Science and the research is a very hard field. I don't mean other field is not hard. Every profession has its own difficulty. It's very difficult to excel in any profession of your choice. But science, and many people say, you professor, you guys have a easy living and you don't have to punch card to come to work. And it's not just for science, for any profession. And you have 3 months of a summer, and then they don't know. And before my retirement, I usually work at least 6 days per week, and it's 12 or it's more than 12 hours per day. It's easy, and so people don't know that. Of course, we don't have to punch card, but how many people know I have a couch in my office with a sleeping bag, with a microwave oven, and when I'm writing a grant proposal, sometimes I sleep in my office 3 nights, 4 nights in a row. People don't know that. People all oh, you have 3 months of summer vacation. I wish that were true.
Yeah, this is very similar to English literature too. You just work so much, so many hours.
It's just you have to like what you do.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, like I said before, be critical about your own work and be proud of what you have done.
So my last question is, do you have any advice for future generations or future scientists?
I have no special wisdom in this, and just devoted to what you do. Don't, particularly in the field of science. Science, the purpose is to find out the truth. So be truthful about yourself. Be truthful about what you do. And science is pure. Scientists are not necessarily so for all of us. Some of the scientists are very good people, highly respected by me. I'm sorry to say, some so-called scientists may be very capable, but not necessarily a good person. I have encountered some of them when they are almost like a politician. And so if you choose to be a scientist, just be truthful. Otherwise, can you sleep well at night? And by the time you close your eye, do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel good about what you have done? And just be truthful and be critical about yourself, and be truthful to you and to other people and to the field of science. And so I'm no better than other people. I just, I think I have a very happy life because I like what I do. And I like what I have done. And that's probably the most rewarding thing to myself. And I like them to have the same kind of a pleasure. I told my students, just, do good science and then do science right, then you'll be happy.
I think that's so important given the political landscape of today and all the research that is coming out, particularly during this pandemic.
Mhm.
Okay, so that was my last question. Thank you so much for agreeing to be interviewed today and taking the time.
Okay. Is this